We'd left off at Alan Ross, who was my Chicago film teacher, the one who was surprised I was no longer involved with film. I'll turn this on for a moment so you can get a feeling of who he is.
How am I supposed to watch the game, man? Hey, man.
What are you doing here? What are you doing here, Bob? Wasting your time.
Doing my White Sox courtesy card for
It's the only way you come to games.
Das ist mein Freund Alan Ross, ein Filmemacher und Kameramann aus Chicago. Seine Scherze waren nicht immer nach meinem Geschmack.
Goodbye, goodbye. Go back to Europe where you belong.
Aber trotzdem kam ich jedes Mal wieder, um einen neuen Film mit ihm zu drehen. Im Herbst 95 ging für uns beide ein alter Traum in Erfüllung. Wir machten eine Reise den Mississippi hinunter, von der kanadischen Grenze bis zum Golf von Mexiko.
Since this is in German, I'll stop it. And, you know, I only found this tonight. And so we have a couple of trains of thought running here. I'll go back to that wonderful, but, you know, sad, really, in looking back on it, last meeting with Alan, which was at a little place across the street from the Art Institute. And we met, and he said, you know, how come you're not filming? What's going on? And I had actually been proofreading in New York at that point and was visiting. And he said, who was this teacher? You know, because I told him I was traumatized. I couldn't believe it. Could not believe that something hit me that deeply, that whatever programming there was. And I always try to think, what was it that made it so? Was it the combination of the great isolation out there, the sort of D.B. Cooper, you know, in the woods feeling, or was it the drugs that were, maybe I felt like I'd been on drug there on several occasions, and we will get into that later. There's a lot to cover. And right now we're with Alan and in Chicago at this wonderful restaurant on a cold day, and he was in his reindeer sweater, and I said it was Bruce Bailey, who he had shown one Bruce Bailey film in class. Mainly we had studied new American experimental filmmakers, although we saw a lot of other footage as well. We saw a lot of just raw Vietnam footage, raw World War II footage, a lot of journalistic footage, as well as, of course, some European. And, you know, we certainly did not see Quick Billy. We saw a film of Bruce's that was mainly like a field of flowers with a train going through it, a sort of man against nature theme. That's the only film that they ever showed in that class of Bruce. And it's just, he said, what do you mean Bruce Bailey was your teacher? What on earth do you mean? And I said, yeah, you know, that was my teacher. And he said he had come to the Art Institute, you know, in Chicago at one point, and it had been actually years before. Here, there he is. And it had been years and years before, and people had complained, I guess, that he was telling young girls that they needed to come up to his room and watch movies, and it just, for the Art Institute, that was not appropriate. And so I guess that the Art Institute put out, I guess that there are complaints that go through colleges. And so there were complaints that were put out against Bruce Bailey. And I think that Goddard or Bard, I believe he had said, there were other colleges as well. And that basically he had exhibited really bad behavior. And that's why this is important for me to tell you, because Alan Ross said Evergreen should have known better. That, he said that's just like hiring Charles Manson or something. Everyone knows Bruce Bailey is this crazed, out of control, pervert. That's just, everyone knows that. And that there was no reason for them to hire him, because everyone had written bad things about him, and that any college that hires an artist in residence is responsible for knowing what their track record is in other places that they have been. And I'm saying this because this is important in regards to student safety, and none of this, of course, was addressed. And we will get into that. I watched my other video and I was being too vague. I said the college did not care. Well, the college, it was actually, individuals. Dean Perkins, and I believe his actual name is Dean Perkins, and he was I believe he was a dean. So Dean Perkins was the person who headed up the investigation when the other student, whose name was Mark Smith, and I would feel weird saying that, except there are so many Mark Smiths out there that nobody will be able to find him. There's a zillion that went to Evergreen alone, so there. And sorry I slipped on that, though. But he was the one who went and made the formal complaint, and then I said, yes, he's been doing these things. And we'll get into when he was also forcing students off campus and forcing us to be in his camper and things like that. Yeah, so there was almost, when I'm watching Quick Billy again, there's almost this feeling of, what people must have felt like who were put through MK Ultra, to just be in the middle of the woods in a creepy building that really no one was ever in. It was sort of this giant, empty, creepy place. I think now and then there were plays, and I did go to somebody else's acting class there once, and it was strange just to see some place that was populated. So now, as bad and horrible as this person was and is, now we're realizing that the responsibility is on Evergreen, because they would have known better. Alan told me that he was very deep in the Art Institute, and he also taught at my school, New Trier East, and people had to be very deeply screened. So these are questions that I have that are not answered. And, it's horrifying when one has paid for one's sexual abuse, that one has paid in a college institution for sexual abuse. And it was really beyond just sexual abuse. It was the full meal deal. So we will get into Dean Perkins and photographs of him at a later date. I really thank you again for all your time. Yeah. exactly. This is it.